All right, we're back with another spectacular episode of BS Free MD with your hosts, Doctors May and Tim Hindmarsh. I'm saying I'm going to be stargazing today, and we are going to be getting into the mind and probably the soul of it all with our guest that I'm sure if you haven't heard of, you should have. It's Dr. Keith Ablow. He is a graduate, first of all, from Brown University and the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, but you might know him as an American author, television personality, former psychiatrist. He's been on Fox News Channel, The Blaze. He was actually a former clinical professor at Tufts University School of Medicine, and he then resigned as a member of the American Psychiatric Association in 2011 in protest to the APA's implicit support of transgender surgeries, which he considered irresponsible. Other little bits of bio that I'm going to drop your way is that he is known as the psychiatrist who treated Hunter Biden, and he was also subjected to a raid by the DEA in 2020.
I wonder why.
Yes. But after practicing psychiatry for over 25 years, he's developed his amazing program, life coaching program, mentoring and spiritual counseling program called Pain to Power. And it's all about turning your mental and emotional mess into your message. It's something I found really inspiring, encouraging to listen to, that really picks me up and inspires me to get through my crap. He offers creative coaching for writers, artists, inventors, entrepreneurs, and leaders, and has helped thousands of people across the globe. So he's had 16 books written to his name with countless TV appearances, and his coaching list that reads like I think a very VIP party guest list. He's here to share with us and you his insights, and we hope to dissect too what has happened to mental health counseling and especially psychiatry as we used to know it. So thanks for being here, joining us, Dr. Ablow. If I can call you Keith, is that okay?
Please do.
Thanks.
Yes.
It'll make me feel a little bit more calm. No. Super excited to have you here. And I don't know, where do you want to start and dive into, Tim?
So I want to start with, how were you trained? Were you an analyst? Were you classically trained as far as psychiatry in that regard? To kind of get a background for your feel for, when you went from there to more of the coaching realm, it would be, I think, instructive to kind of understand that story.
Great question. Yes. So I trained in med school. I was at Johns Hopkins, and I had a mentor there, Paul McHugh, who was the head of the psychiatry department there. That was a very psychopharm-based, psychopharmacologically based, medication-based department. And I decided that my training after med school should have at least one foot in a kind of psychoanalytic framework. And so I went on to New England Medical Center, Tufts New England Medical Center. Carol Nadelson was there, who was the president of the American Psychiatric Association, and her husband, Ted Nadelson, who became a mentor of mine. They were really skilled at the analytics side, but Dick Shader was there, who was a psychopharmacologist. So I moved on. I came back to Boston. I'd been raised in this area, and I got both sides of the equation. So the psychodynamic side and the medication training, unlike psychiatrists graduating today who really aren't prepared to do psychotherapy at all.
No.
I do have to say that one of the nice things about being at Hopkins during those years and having Paul McHugh as my mentor is he had shut down the gender reassignment clinic at Johns Hopkins when he arrived as chairman of psychiatry, because he knew even back then, I graduated med school in 1987. He knew back then that it was a complete sham, that these people were ill. They weren't looking to be different genders. The cure wasn't plastic surgery or hormonal manipulation. The cure was to figure out what the heck is wrong with them in terms of their mental status, because they're not well. I mean, they're not evil. They're not well. They need help, and it's not cosmetic help. So that's sort of the background of my training. And I really learned the power of understanding people's stories. People do pretty well if they can enter the depths of everything that's happened to them, and realize, okay, so these are the ways in which I have been confused, or have had clouded judgment, or have skipped over or wanted to skip over paragraphs, pages, chapters of my life story. When those are restored to someone and they are in full possession of their stories, they do pretty well. It's not easy getting there sometimes, but they do pretty well.
Yeah, I think that that's really amazing. The thing that hits me as soon as you talked about that, the story part, is we interviewed Theron Fleury a year or two ago, and he was a professional hockey player, won the Stanley Cup with the Calgary Flames in 1989, and he was raped, I think he said 130 times by his junior hockey coach. And so through this trauma, he did what most people do, maladaptive trauma response. So he became a drug addict and alcoholic, all of this stuff. He eventually freed himself from that. And it really hit me talking to him, because it was trauma. Treating trauma is kind of become his life's message since he's left hockey. And what I had seen in my own medical practice of over 30 years is we equate trauma and mental illness as exactly the same thing, because a lot of the symptoms are the same. But in reality, they're vastly different things. If you have been traumatized, the cure for your mental illness is to walk through the trauma and sort that out. It's not to be numbed by an agent that makes you not feel. And I mean, literally, I've done this for, I don't know how, like I said, like 32 years. And it's just dawned on me in the last 18 months that, we're treating trauma like we're treating somebody who is, mentally ill from birth. They're not the same patient. And most of people with mental health struggles are just trauma victims.
We're all traumatized in
Yes.
one way or another, right? I mean, who has had a perfect journey? You may be more or less traumatized, but the truth is, if you're growing up now, for instance, and people are encouraging you to leave your core self, be an avatar or have one, lose yourself in video games, get high most of the time, cut yourself off from a spiritual life, have no particular connection to God, you're traumatized by that, right? Our culture is traumatizing people. Never mind families. Families are tough. I mean, how many people had parents who were perfect at helping us discern who we really were in our core talents and intentions? Very few people have that. Families divorce. You have losses before you can understand them. You can't make sense of things, and therefore you're hurt by them in a way that somebody who is older, an adult, who can process things wouldn't be. So if you're 7 and you lose someone you love, that's a whole different thing than if you're 27 and that happens. And you may well try to bury that. And unfortunately, that might mean alcohol, drugs, being a workaholic, being depressed and not knowing why that is. But unfortunately, also profoundly unfortunately so, psychiatry will now help you bury it. Because if you walk into most offices, someone's reaching for a prescription pad or the digital version of it the second you walk in, essentially, and saying, well, which diagnoses shall I assign to this person and which medications correspond to those diagnoses? And my job's done. That's not compassion, empathy, human understanding. It's not healing. It might mask symptoms for a long time. You may be able to get to the next few chapters of your life story, but you haven't gotten underneath to solve things.
So I'm thinking back to, when we were doing family practice, that I don't know if it's just me or I'm wrong in thinking, but a lot of the times it was the patient can't do, and we had a lot of psychiatric, actually pretty good training and counseling, but I think I learned that it was like the patient can't do the work if they're even not in a place to clearly sort of think because they're so despondent,
Sure.
anxiety, depressed, not even functioning. If you're poorly functioning with all of that stuff, then you don't even have the ability to do the work. So it was like, so put them on something as a temporary fix or temporary aid, whether that's the SSRI or the older agents for sleep, or a little bit of some Xanax is needed to calm the worst symptoms so that they're at least able to then do the work and then get them into counseling and now it's just so difficult. And then that was like supposed to be the help thing, but I don't know, over time, it just seems like people didn't do the work, couldn't get in, had no time, and it's just easier to take the pill and move on. And then I think somewhere along the way, things have gotten really messed up, which we'll get to, but I think it was just easier to take a pill and then we wrote off the whole thing of, well, it's not your fault. You have a brain imbalance, a chemical imbalance.
I have told that to so many patients, and I am so unbelievably ashamed of that.
Yes.
That's
what we learned at one point too. It's like not their fault. It is, or anyone, living in the past and blaming others. It's a neurochemical imbalance. So you're just trying to correct that. Like your gut microbiome, you're just taking your kefir or whatever.
And we act as if the two things are completely divorced from one another. So the notion that if you find inflammation in the brain or low serotonin and the person happens to be depressed, that doesn't mean the two things are causally related and nothing else is. It can certainly be the case that having a life that's confusing, going through trauma, I believe that can lower your serotonin. I think there's a place sometimes for medicines to be able to lift people up to the extent that they can then do the work. Absolutely. No question. But there's no evidence that your life didn't affect your serotonin levels or didn't cause central nervous system inflammation. And we already know, because there have been studies showing that excellent empathetic psychotherapy can bring about the same changes in the brain on a PET scan, positron emission tomography scan, as effective medication. And people use that to justify the medication. I use it to justify the fact that there's obviously a God. I mean, if you can talk to someone and empathize with that person and understand that person's journey and lot in life, and it changes their brain in such a way that you can pick it up on a PET scan in the same way that Prozac would affect the brain when it works, that's a miracle. That will never be understood. We'll never find that under a microscope. It doesn't have to do with anything that we're going to be able to use an electron microscope to define, right? It's about human connectedness, empathy, the power of real healing. That's gone by the wayside because they've made it possible for psychiatrists to make much more money in 10-minute increments prescribing medication every 10 minutes to a different patient, which is standard, than talking to someone for an hour. Who talks to the patients now? Well, a social worker, maybe a licensed mental health counselor, which you can be if you didn't happen to go to college. I'm not saying these people are bad people, but we've brought down the level of education required to decipher people's suffering with empathy, poetry, philosophy, psychology, and said to the doctors, get out of the way, just write medicines. Why did we do that? Well, I think we did it partly. I didn't do it. You didn't do it. You wouldn't do it. Neither of you would. I think society did it because we're afraid of empowering the individual. And right now, our culture is about crushing the individual. Nobody wants to restore individuals to their full potential because, well, that doesn't quite go with the progressive agenda.
Well, I think that's
no kidding.
Like when you look at SSRIs, most of them are virtually impossible for people to get off of. You get the brain zaps or whatever it was. And then, and you think of this, like you think of this just from kind of like put the conspiracy hat on and you go, okay, let's get everybody on pills that make them not really feel much of anything. So they don't really give two craps about, X, Y, or Z. And oh, by the way, to the point where they're so apathetic that A, they have no libido, and B, they can't get it up anyways. Like you want to talk about, Soma from Brave New World, which was exactly the plan in Aldous Huxley's book. You give everyone a little dose of something, and then they're happy to dig ditches for the rest of their life because they don't know any better and they don't care because they're kind of a little perma high, and then you have complete control over them. And I'm like, this is Brave New World, man.
Seen that way, you're absolutely right. Seen that way, you're absolutely right. And how many people are now not on something? In other words, it's half the country is taking something, and we don't look into what is the fallout from that. Well, the chief fallout is, you forgot about becoming the most robust person you could be, right? Because somebody said, just take this and you won't be in as much pain. Well, there is an equivalent to that, which would be if you had back pain and someone just medicated the pain and never looked to see whether you had underlying pathology, you'd end up crippled. Hello. Right. And, if you do look at the trajectories of these medications, and I don't think that they're all bankrupt, I think they have their place. But if you look at the standard trajectory, it's higher and higher doses over time, usually adding another medicine to the mix, to the cocktail. And do those folks say, I have become the person I was meant to be from all time? I have become the person I think I should be. We've never done that study. We should do that study and look at people on SSRIs for 5 and 10 and 25 years and say, so when you look at the great swath of your life, has it been what you hoped it would be? Or do you feel as though somehow you haven't been able to really engage the gears to become everything that was possible for you? So I think that's part of the great tragedy of psychiatry is that you used to go to psychiatrists to listen.
Yeah.
It was the listening profession. You're not going to be listened to by a psychiatrist. There are few.
I was going to say, are there any that do that anymore? And where would one find one?
Well, you're gonna pay cash. Insurers won't deal with that. They're not going to let psychiatrists talk to people. And fewer and fewer. I mean, they're dying off. I had the greatest experience. I mean, I went to a psychiatrist myself because it was something you did when you were chief resident in psychiatry. I sat down with the legendary James Mann. I consider him legendary, in Newton, Mass. Newton, Mass, by the way, has the highest per capita density, they say, of psychiatrists in the world. It's Vienna. It's outside of Boston. I don't know.
I ran through there the Boston Marathon a couple times. So
did you feel calm?
I felt unbelievably painful because it's the Newton Hills, and you after running downhill for almost 20 miles, you run up and downhill, which is just deliciously horrible. But yes.
There you go. Well, my marathon was James Mann, but so 5 feet, 5'2", 80 years old, seersucker suit, a couple Indian bracelets. And he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, I'm chief resident. They say I should be embarrassed that I haven't gone yet. There's this girl, he held up a hand. He said, "Do you ever get the sense as you're talking that you're completely full of crap?" Right? And I said, "Sometimes." And he said, "Well, it's your time, it's your money, it's your life. And if you want to waste all three, I guess I'll sit here with you." Well, blows you back in your chair. And I don't want to waste anything. "Okay, then," he said, "let's get going here. Tell me the truth." So that was worth the price of admission. Wow. But how many guys like that are there? By the way, when I was leaving after my first session, I'm standing in the grand entryway of his Colonial in Newton. I said, have a good weekend. And he turned around before he disappeared into his study again. And he said, "You and I don't know one another well enough for you to give a shit what kind of weekend I have. Take care. I'll see you next week." He was all about honesty. He was about, let's not mince words. Let's really get to it. We don't have all that much time on this earth. Let's make you, okay? Don't lie to me about anything. That is what people need desperately.
Well, it's what they're hungering for.
Yes.
But then they're feeding from the wrong troughs, right? I mean, because there's literally an endless supply of dopamine hits now. And so when you can get a dopamine hit from, getting a like on social media, or from a drug, or from, take your pick of different things. And so it's,
I think
we're so connected, but so disconnected. And yet when you look at who lives the longest, one of the most poignant, single, reproducible things is the quality of the relationships that you have. And we're living in a society where there's two of what I call the four pillars of health, physical fitness, food, sleep, and relationships. So no one sleeps, and everyone's relationships suck because their relationships are based on electronics. And you sit there and you go, dude, you've just sawed two legs off the stool.
Absolutely. The drugs are coming through our screens. It's become ubiquitous. We're meeting this way, right? We're using the same highway, the same superhighway that drug dealers at Facebook or TikTok are using to deliver drugs. It used to be you'd have to take a risk and meet people in an alleyway to sell, grams of Coke. Now you sell ads on Facebook to corporations. Facebook is basically coring people. It's making people create a false reality, an avatar of themselves, deny their core feelings, make themselves appear to be happier, more content, more popular than they really are, and distill their lives. Lives are not distillable into posts, it turns out. If you try to do it, you will diminish yourself, self in capital letters. You will try to squeeze yourself through the pixelated screen, and in so doing, shred your core. As Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message when he wrote Understanding Media. There's no escaping the fact that when you try to interact with a screen and reduce yourself to its way of communicating, that you reduce yourself. You homogenize the population. You take away their individuality. You make them owned and operated by the very machine that they're using to communicate. No wonder we have become even more tribal, and there's more conflict in the world, because he predicted that would happen with the advent of any new technology like this that threatened to take away people's core selves. One way people can remind themselves they're alive is to kill or die. Sadly.
Interesting. Well, McLuhan said that like in the 60s?
Yeah. 60s, early 70s. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it was around, I was born in 65, and I think it was like 69 or 70. So,
I'm sure you're right.
I get the IHOP discount at 4:00. So it was a while ago.
There you go.
And he was also a Canadian as well.
Your hair, and I want to congratulate you on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But which is just like that is so unbelievably prophetic and profound. The media is the message.
Yes.
And advertisers 100%. Who was that? Bernays or whatever, that the guy that essentially invented smoking for women by advertising suffragettes smoking 100 years ago.
Amazing, right?
Amazing. Like, it literally invented an entire industry, modern manipulation through advertising. And how much more are we manipulated when you have giant AI algorithms that know not only what you click on, they know where your eyes go.
So now they know where your eyes go. Exactly. And I recently spoke to someone who's consulting to a company. They're going to have an avatar dating company. This fellow told me, listen, if you send me one of your manuscripts, which has your turns of phrase, your thinking, maybe living the truth, he suggested, my book on how to remake your life. And if you send me a bunch of your YouTube videos of your appearances, I will send you. I said, what do you mean me? He said, I will send you an avatar that is essentially indistinguishable from you. You will be able to talk to yourself and it'll freak you out. It's going to use your turns of phrase. It'll do that thing you do where you're like, interesting. It'll do that because we'll have that from the videos. So he's consulting to a dating company. You won't go on the dates anymore. Your avatar will have a Zoom date with another avatar and report back to you and say, she didn't even laugh at your jokes. I wouldn't go out on a real coffee date with her because there was nothing there. Now, okay. So now what do we become? Directors of our avatars. They're doing one for a talk show, by the way. I won't say which one. It's very big, the talk show. It's not Joe Rogan, but it's of that size, where it's like TED and TEDx. They're creating an avatar of the host. So if you're not that prominent, you go on with, well, kind of the host, like 97%, but he's not there. So that means, are any of us here? And you were so right to say, get to the gym, get in your body, have relationships, get into psychotherapy. You've got to own and occupy yourself because they're coming for it.
Well, and I think a thing that I think a thing that is just absolutely terrifying to me is I'm an action sports guy. So, you know, downhill skiing, skydiving, barefoot water skiing, kiteboarding,
wow,
blah, blah, all this stuff. That's my zone. So I've witnessed 2 recreational fatalities, sad to say. I mean, it's real life. Well, I look at my son's generation. Wow. My son skis, rides motorcycles. He does cool stuff that I did when I was 24. But so much of his generation, they don't do anything dangerous because it scares the hell out of them. You know, when you can play a video game and respawn yourself and still be a killer and a hero and carry the sword with 0 risk. Well, guess what, kids? Life isn't a 0 risk game. It's a massive risk game and no one gets out alive. Like when I think of that, I'm like, I want to grab life by the balls when I hear that. And they're like, no, the stove is hot. And I'm like, that's the only way you're going to cook with a hot stove.
I mean, our kids'
exactly.
generation, it was like nobody got outside and went to the park because it was dangerous. Nobody, rode their bike and got scraped because you're right. They're playing video games or on their little computer, whatever the kids had back then, a Wii and I forget all the Nintendo. I mean, life has changed and you're right. And now if we're having avatars interacting for us, I mean, it's like sending your identical twin out, right?
It's a date pre-screen. That's exactly, but 0 risk.
Even not just dating, but in like everything is becoming fake. Then how do you even know who you are? I mean,
well, you don't, which is what they're banking on, which is how they take power and give it to the state, amongst other things, how they cut you off from your worship. Because how can you worship if you have no access to your own core self? I had a coaching client come in recently. Thankfully, I think I've set him a little bit more straight. Spent about $50,000. Doesn't have it. Okay, his family doesn't have that kind of money. He accessed it to buy wings and weapons on Wartune, a game, because he wanted to be one of the top people in the Northeast region of this, that on the game Wartune, and you can compete better if you have special wings as a monster or whatever these things are, a creature. If they're able to extract tens of thousands of dollars from average Americans who desperately want to think of themselves as players, big players in a video game where they're monsters, not human, we're in a dangerous place. Because working at the pizza shop thinking I'm really actually a warrior on Wartune, that's really what I am. But I just happen to work at the pizza. Well, I'm really that, though. That's called hallucinating. That's called like being on drugs. That's called being on drugs. They sold $50,000 worth of drugs and nobody's getting arrested. They're selling stock in this and Americans are buying it like crazy.
Well, it's just, you're right. I mean, it's creating these delusions, but I like your analogy better where that's right. They're selling drugs, but there's no link in the chain for anybody to be responsible for. And how do you, and you know, that takes us into the whole realm of, you know, you
I know
being
Tim's thinking
psychiatry and the whole, you know, what is your pronoun and how do you identify, and that whole thing of us now, the whole society's supporting it because we've all fallen into this. Well, not all of us, but people are just following the masses and thinking it's supposed to be the right thing for the person, and these delusions of, well, I can be whoever I want to be. Except if your 5-year-old, you know, wants to be a pirate and cut their leg off, well, that's not cool. But if they want to cut their penis off, it's okay. So,
well, and there are certainly adherents in. I did a documentary years ago in Holland and spent a long time with a doctor there who was very forthcoming and said, "Listen, if you believe yourself to be a double amputee, that's your self-image. I think it's reasonable for a doctor, he was a doctor, to cut your legs off." And this is a debate. There's a real debate now in medicine. Is that the right course to take? I do think there's a dashed or a solid line between the introduction of social media, this notion you're going to make yourself out of pixels, you're going to fashion your own reality and have wings, and kids being very confused and saying, I'm not a tomboy, I'm a boy. And their teachers will say, yes, you're very special. You need special things. You need to be protected. You are a boy, and if your parents get in the way, we'll get your parents out of the way. It's very perilous to be a kid now. Really is. They may take your identity if you hint that you're willing to surrender it.
we've had this. I forgot. You know, we were talking early, and we had the truthful therapist on. We went down this road.
And Miriam Grossman, we had her
Miriam
on too.
Grossman on with the whole history of it. But what's your thoughts on the mental health group as a whole, like endorsing this, like from school counselors to social workers,
the American Academy of Pediatrics,
psychologists, psychiatrists, the College of Pediatrics. I mean, for the love of goodness, I'm like, those of us that went to medical school and learned genetics and like, how can you just start to, I don't know, how are people starting to like get on board with this and condone it? I don't understand. As a clinician, as a physician, that messing with kids, especially like in this way, makes any scientific sense, let alone moral, all that stuff.
Right.
But how, I mean, it seems like such a weird crossover. So for instance, we've had this discussion before. Back in the, when I was younger, I was severely anorexic, bulimic. Nobody would think of giving me a gastric bypass or handing me diet pills or, just saying, yeah, you don't get to eat. It was like, you need what's going on. But now if I, went and said, well, I'm in the wrong body, I'm really a man, I want to get my breasts removed, I want a hormone, no problem. And so what has happened in the medical culture to totally make that shift?
To use a biblical term, who has bewitched them?
Well, I think in the case of the transgender movement, if you look at the initials LGBT and the rest of them that follow that, nobody should be bullied. No one should be hated. Everyone should have all the rights in the world, right? But it's weird how quickly the LGB movement accepted the T. There's been a domino effect, right? It seems, if you look at that nomenclature, there's been a domino effect wherein there's a slippage of respect for and concern about abandoning usual human behaviors that are considered the norm. There's been slippage in that, and people who fancy themselves empathetic have said, well, if you say you're different, then we're your tribe, and we're going to consider you downtrodden, and we're going to feel very good about ourselves when we defend your right to choose, okay, or whatever it might be. It's a way of, I think, disempowering others by saying, oh, yes, you should be able to make any decision you like, even one that might be self-defeating, because, we care so much about you. You really have a journey in front of you. So I think the American Psychiatric Association is reprehensible. Can you imagine a professional organization inventing the notion or subscribing to the idea that people can be born into the wrong bodies?
No.
I mean, why not then coin a new diagnosis about the fact that you've had past lives? The past lives are leaking into your present life. It's called past life pathology disorder. Come up with a couple.
Yes.
Hey, it makes more sense than this.
Oh, way more.
It does.
Come up with a couple codes, get the insurers to pay, hit them over the head until they pay. Get everybody in. Put the word out far and wide. Your past lives are leaking into your present existence. Come on in. Get a medicine. We'll create a couple chemicals that deal with past life leakage disorder. It'll, fluoxetine, the dextro-rotating isomer, right? And we're going to test it and see if people who say that this is afflicting them, they probably have anxiety, by the way, and they've just glommed onto this new story, but they have anxiety. So for a time, the levo-rotating or dextro-rotating fluoxetine will help them, or they'll feel it does, because if you give people something, they feel like you're helping me and we have a relationship now. And so that alone is going to be powerful. Plus the mantle of, listen, you don't have to set your life straight. After all, you're dealing with the fact that you were a serial killer in a prior life. That's a lot. I mean, that could take you 15 years to get over. There you have it.
So I have.
Don't even vote. Don't even vote. Don't go try to being an American. Don't vote. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
I have just got you had me at leakage. I have the greatest idea. You have the platform. I have the crazy ideas. We're gonna make past life leakage depends.
There you go.
So you put on this emotional diaper because all these people are emotionally incontinent anyways, and you just walk around like an episode of South Park. And it captures your true essence, which is obviously leaking out of your butt anyways, from your past life of being Jack the Ripper. Problem solved.
Problem solved. I am telling you that it would be embraced by a substantial percentage of the population, most of them progressives, and therefore by the APA, which has been taken hostage apparently by progressives. Mm-hmm. It would be seen and why? Partly because this notion that empathy is a political stance, right? So it's easy to take an organization like that hostage. Plus, there's a lot of money to be made by saying that something's a diagnosis. Like, there would be a real research interest and a real organizational interest in the notion of labeling past life leakage disorder, as long as there was a pharmaceutical company that said, yeah, we can help with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, it's always about the money trail.
Well, like I wanted to start an organization called LIMB, lesbian in a man's body, because clearly, like, I'm attracted to women. I've been married to my wife for 32 years. But I'm just a lesbian trapped in a man's body. And I know that because every time I drive past a Subaru dealership, I feel this amazing draw to go get a Subaru.
There you go. I'll one up you on that, even though it's your show. I'll bring another a case file from the files of the Dr. Keith Ablow clinical experiences. I had someone come in. His parents brought him because he said, I'm gay. Now, that wasn't the real reason. They brought him in because the reason he said he was gay with fervor and absolute conviction is because his girlfriend had decided she was male. Now, if she's male, he said to me, I am gay. I said, well, wait a sec. Has she transitioned anatomically? And he said, no. I said, so you find her female body attractive? He said, yeah. I said, so how can you be gay if you're attracted to female anatomy? He said, because she's a man. You're not hearing me. He was dead serious.
Oh my God.
So it's like the Escher hand drawing the hand. It's like, it's almost like delusions have become contagious, which of course they have because they spread them in schools now.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
The
Yeah.
whole thing in schools, it's so sad. I mean,
Well,
the,
no,
the
I mean,
playing into
yeah.
the whole thing. I mean, I think it is criminal. We lived in a town of like 8,500 people.
Huh.
They were putting litter boxes in the bathrooms for those that identified as furries, or I don't know what the terminology was, but that was just recently. And I'm thinking, now we have adults condoning and supporting, like the whole world's gone mad. I feel like I need to go live back in a log cabin in northern Canada and just get off the grid. Like, how does one go forward?
Well, you know, you had a couple ideas there. You get back into your body. I like to say, get a dog. Really immerse yourselves in relationships. Immerse ourselves in relationships that matter. Tell people how much you love them when you do. Hug a little bit longer. These have now become like immunizations against complete catastrophe. And folding your cards and saying, okay, I'll just be an avatar. And, you know, I can put on whatever paper gender I like, or think I like. It's a catastrophe, and it also takes away the authority of parents because, as I've told lots of parents, no, do not go to Boston Children's Hospital with your child who thinks he or she might be transgender for help. They're not going to help you.
No.
They're going to affirm the child's stance, prepare them for hormone injections, and if you try to stand in the way, they're going to come after your parental rights and say that you're abusing your kid. Okay, so it's all interestingly nested with the state taking more and more and more control. Because if you don't know even who you are, what your gender is, you're in no position to have real power in the world.
No.
And that is absolutely the sun with which this orbits.
Exactly.
Because it is so completely devoid of common sense. If there's 100 and whatever genders and you can identify as any one of those, then why do you need the reassignment at all? Your anatomy doesn't matter because you can just say, you know, I'm non-binary, I'm this, I'm they, and the anatomy should matter zero. But somehow in this transgender, which I call the invasion of the body snatchers, it literally is the most important thing. Oh no, we have to transition them right away.
Because my boobs are giving me distress.
We have to transition.
It's like it's worse than a zit on my forehead.
Like it's so.
I mean, that's what patients say.
Well,
I mean, not to totally make fun of it, but it is that body part, and it's part of the right. I'm hijacking probably what you should be saying for us but it's the whole delusion. It's like it's that body part is giving them such great distress. It's a delusion. Just like I would look in the mirror and swear I was 500 pounds and saw something different. It wasn't
right. And there's work to do.
Yeah.
There's work to do. Like now, there are just so many posers there where if you were able to do a PET scan on most therapists, you wouldn't find their brains working as much as they ought to be.
No.
Because the truth is, that's a lot of work. You have someone come to your office who thinks he's a woman, like that should be cause to do a deep dive into that person's entire life history, life story, all kinds of tests of hormones, everything, blood tests.
Yep.
It's a lot of work. We should be looking at, by the way, people hate it when I say this, of the opposite political ilk, but how do we know that if you take someone who's male anatomy, instead of giving them estrogen to make them look female when they say they feel female, we've never done a test on whether giving them testosterone would make more sense? Wouldn't that seem like, I mean, shouldn't we do the test? Like, see whether if you take a double blind thing, half get estrogen, half get testosterone, what happens? We won't do that because science is out the window because everything's fake. We have fake trials like the one that the president's going through, show trials where justice is trampled upon. We have fake psychiatry, fake elections. It's an amazing time. And now we're going to make fake people. So if you guys are real busy, you may say, you know, Keith, he doesn't have the same audience he once did, and we're busy. Let's have our avatars do the show. We'll be on
good to me. No, I'm kidding.
BS3MD Plus, a little extension of the show. And then life and death doesn't matter, by the way, because if your avatar can live forever, what claim do you have on longevity? Get out of the way, one might say. This idea that you want to be healed into your 90s or 100 or beyond, why are you taking up resources? Your avatar can go on for you. How about we cap some of these resources that we were going to deliver to you? It's all very dangerous stuff that we're playing with right now. Your comic book version of yourself is a lot less expensive to maintain by our culture than you are.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's Logan's Run and Terminator combined, right? You know, Skynet has become self-aware.
Yeah, I was just thinking of something. Since, you know, you're coaching now, you're not correct?
Yes.
And I'm just thinking, you know, you're right. Like, people need to get off social media where it's fake friends and fake lives and 5-second bleeps of unreality. And what are your thoughts on, you know, with the psychiatry and where it's going, and nobody's doing psychoanalysis? And like you said, that physician that he was so brutally honest with you. I mean, that's what friends are supposed, your best friends are supposed to be for, or maybe a pastor, some spiritual mentor. What are your thoughts on people getting coaches that they trust? Because technically a coach, you know, unlike a psychiatrist or therapist, they just go, tell me how that really makes you feel, and not, you know, being brutally honest back. What about would you sort of endorse coaches for people over any of those other licensed mental health workers? Because a good coach should,
Yeah.
You know, I'm thinking like Mel Robbins, who's like totally honest, or, you know, just call you out on all bullshit. Say, well, this is what what you're doing is stupid, instead of, well, let you think through that and report back to me. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think you should be looking for someone who can, in a very gripping way, you know, seek the core of your existence. And you should have moments where you feel like you're blown back in your seat and you feel like, whoa, I never thought of that. Like, you got to have a few of those moments where you're in the wrong office, a few moments where you're like, whoa, like, you mean to say that these things are connected? Yeah. It's like people really, they have this reaction when they see it, where it's almost like disbelief, but it's intense belief. Like, this makes sense. My story makes sense now. I can now write the next pages of my life story, metaphorically speaking, because I understand the chapters that came before it. We're living our lives, so many of us. I like this metaphor. If you were told, listen, read the first 100 pages of this book, skip the next 100 pages, and then write the end. Or don't read the first 100 pages, just read the middle 100, then write the end. You'd say, I'm uncomfortable. I feel anxiety and a sense of maybe even depression. You're asking me to do something I'm ill-equipped to do. That's the way we live our lives. We don't access our real stories, and we should. We have to do that in order to be effective in the world and be to own ourselves, which right now they don't want us to do at all. Self-ownership is rapidly becoming an extinct condition.
Yeah, that is so unbelievably profound, because it's interesting, and it may be just not just, it may be the analyst training that is part of this, because it's exactly what Peter Bregan said. It's like, people ultimately want to be accepted. They ultimately want to know that they're loved, and they want to know who they are. And
exactly.
And it's just like, but then to get them out of the office in 10 minutes, give them something that does exactly the opposite of that.
Exactly. And don't even hand them a paper prescription anymore. Just, use your computer to send some code to CVS, or Dwayne Reed or whatever else. Listen, it's absolutely true. I still remember a colleague of mine during my psychiatry training who was in a lot of ways not making the most of his existence. And he had the same therapist I did, James Mann. He came in white as a ghost one day, said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I was getting out of the cab on my way to the hospital, and I was getting in the cab, he was getting out. And he said, you again, are you still wasting your life? That's what you need, right? You again. You still wasting your life?
Oh.
That's love, man. That's really caring about somebody. But you know what? You get the same dollars per minute from the psychopharmacology insurance company if you never say anything like that. Why would you do the work? Someone might get mad at you. You have to actually care. You have to, delve into the depths of their existence to make sure you're right or feel like you're right. It's work. You have to be engaged. No one wants to be engaged now. They want to be on Prozac with wings on War Tune, and TikTok videos that they're laughing hysterically at, where you don't even know, are they real? Are they real? Is the kitten real? Does that kitten exist? They say it was found on the road and that it's a friend with a monkey now. I don't know if it's true or not, right? Like, I mean, you see these videos, you're like, my life is mundane. This kitten is now adopted by a monkey, which is owned by this family that also has a tiny horse. What am I doing?
Well, clearly wasting your
my
life.
Clearly, my life is not that interesting if their lives are real, and I'm not sure. So therefore, I'm not sure if I'm real. And anyhow, people aren't insisting that I be real, because if I go and buy a coffee at Starbucks and I say, my name is Katie and I have no gender, they're like, you are fabulous that you'd be brave enough to say that.
Exactly.
It should be that they're saying, man, like, let me give you the name of a therapist. Like,
you a piece of paper with your coffee, like, here's some help.
Yeah,
which would be honestly the compassionate.
Well, but that's exactly right.
To do.
But that's exactly right. Like, skydiving for me is such a great metaphor, because you never get the, you know what, you need to try a little bit harder at opening your parachute talk. The talk you get is, I won't use the language that they use at drop zones, but it's like, you're screwing up and you're going to kill yourself and somebody else.
Yeah.
This is what you need to do if you're going to still be part of this organization, or get out and go bold.
Well, and if you told them, I can fly, don't worry about it, they would say, you are not going to be on this journey with us anymore. You're crazy.
Yeah, you don't get to identify as a bird at the drop
You
zone.
do not get to identify as a War Tune monster here.
No.
It's real stuff. And so getting involved in real stuff is tremendously important. And by the way, that's one reason that people hate one politician or love another. We have a guy who obviously cannot I would say, who can't discharge the responsibilities of the office. It seems obvious, and yet people are saying, well, why would you say that? What? Why would you say that? Well, why would I say that? Because he wanders around like a Roomba.
I know.
Unattended.
I'm like, I don't want those people, those physicians that are diagnosing him as normal to be my physician because I'm like, they clearly.
But he is wearing the BS free MD past life leakage
Stop.
pants.
That's important.
From a branding perspective, I'm 100% behind
I'm
that.
sure you're right.
By the way, I don't know why no one has yet made a claim that they should receive Medicare when they're chronologically 40,
Right.
because they are 60 or 65 or whatever it is, 65. I don't think that a court would have a leg to stand on in denying them that they identify as 70 years old.
We've actually jokingly said that, or
Well, we should do it. Let's do the test case. We'll both be 70. We'll both get our maximum benefits from Social Security.
just say
We'll get
identify
Medicare.
as 70, or I'm identify as a senior, and I want to get all my stuff.
And the argument, well, we're going to test you DNA wise, and you're going to come back as having the DNA of, a 50-year-old is not going to fly, because it's like, well, DNA is irrelevant. Like XY is irrelevant.
Yeah, exactly. It even says on my driver's license where you're looking at my age, it says, well, what do I, you get to choose now. You don't have to be female, male, or other. So I'm other in age too. There's no.
Here's something that will enrage people. I've never lost a transgender client to transgenderism. Believe it or not, and you could say, well, it's a select population. Who would come to you for help as a transgender person? They must be self-selecting. But the truth is, they really, really, the ones that have come to see me, really, really believe I am the wrong gender. I was born the wrong gender. And usually it's a loved one who says, can you at least talk to Ablow? Once, twice. I've never had anyone go forward and transition. I've actually had one person detransition. So this was I'll make up the story a little bit. Call it a female who went to a male. It may not be, but let's say it were. And was estranged from her mother, completely estranged. Reestablishing a bond with her mother allowed her to stop with the gender reassignment process. She was psychologically, I believe, it seems to be the case, because when all I did was say, you know what, do not argue with your daughter. Don't argue. Don't discuss this gender transition thing. Just spend time. Have fun. Bond. Suddenly, the young woman didn't mind being a young woman as much. Strange. Not really, by the way. Not strange at all.
No, because they were
illegal, by the way. If you're a
probably,
doctor and you do that, that's illegal if you're a doctor and you do that, by the way. It's against the law if you are doing that as a psychiatrist. If you are encouraging someone to not transition, or you're encouraging someone to explore being heterosexual who is not, that is malpractice, or worse. In some states, it can be literally a felony.
Mm-hmm. Whoa, I did not know that.
Yeah, because you're doing conversion therapy, because it's all crazy Baptists throwing you in cold plunge pools.
Well, good thing.
And now Joe Rogan does it on his own.
Good thing I semi-retired last year. I could be wearing orange, and orange is not the new black in my house. So
no. So it's
So before we run out of time, I really, really kind of want to jump.
I want
to
talk to Keith for another hour, because I'm feeling so much more like my authentic self. I must admit,
you could talk to him forever if you write him a check.
Yeah, there you go. No, actually, you guys are doing the work, right? So you make work easier for therapists, because you are about reality and truth. BS free MD. I mean, that's really what people need now. They need the truth. They say the truth will set you free. It really will, actually. Amazing, but it really will.
Yes. So let's talk about pain to power, because now in this world, pain, we just kind of alluded to this, pain or anything hurting or crises is not good. You want to turn that down and not have pain. I have a best friend who hates working out because she doesn't like to sweat, or, you can use it as far as going to the gym, or no pain, no gain. But tell us a little bit about your program, Pain to Power. I love it. Although sometimes going through that pain you just want to end it and it stinks and come up the other side. But yeah, what was the nidus behind all of that?
Well, it has become philosophically very powerful for me to understand that pain is the pathway to growth. And to the extent that you try to avoid pain, you disempower yourself. You used the gym analogy. It's exactly dead on. You can't go to the gym and say, I'm mad now, my muscles are sore. Well, no, you're getting stronger. That's a byproduct of getting stronger. Similarly, in life, it is the things that have caused us pain that when you go and try to understand them and you look at them more, not less, you get stronger. There's a natural human tendency to not do that. Freud might have called it the pleasure principle, right? People don't want to go through pain. But in fact, to the extent that you can identify in your life those things that were most stressful and painful and look at them squarely, turn around, face the tigers, you'll realize they're paper tigers. They seemed incredibly powerful when you were 5, 7, 11, so you buried them. But now if you look at them, you'll be like, okay, I get it. My mom married someone who was extraordinarily controlling. This isn't true for me, but I'm using it as an example. And now I've either married one controlling man after another, and I've had 3 divorces, or I ran to the other side of the seesaw and I married 3 incredibly submissive guys and then got mad that they couldn't hold jobs. And now that's happened. I need to be at the fulcrum of the seesaw, but now I see it. Yes, it hurts to think that that influenced my life as much as it did, but I have a chance now to write better pages going forward. That's pain, and it's okay. The other thing about pain is it's what connects us as humans. Number one, we're mortal. So, we ought to have some empathy for each other because it's a lot to know that you're going to say goodbye to everyone you love and to know how vulnerable we are. Once you accept the pain of how vulnerable you are, you might actually want to make a lot of every day and do the thing that's most important to you and love people in your life a whole lot. Because, as I like to, I don't like to say it, but, people who say, I don't think I should travel to Israel now, I could be killed. I'm like, no, like people are traveling to Tel Aviv right now and they're fine. The real risk is you take a shower tomorrow morning, you reach under your arm, there's a lump. And you're screwed. And you know how often that happens? Every single day.
Yeah.
With tons of people. So you better get on with it. And man, that's painful to realize, but it's also the way you inject your life with meaning and urgency is to realize I'm mortal. So all of these realizations actually become incredibly powerful. The other thing is that, it's never the end. So, when you have trauma in your life or stress, it's just part of the story. And the proper thing to do is to say, okay, I'm in a lot of pain. I wonder what this is about. I wonder how this is going to be turned to the good, because I really do feel like there's a spiritual component to life. This is not happening for no reason. I'm not going to dodge and weave around this. I'm going to feel it, try to understand it, and overcome it. Even the overcoming is the thing. That's what you're supposed to do with it. You're in pain, I know. What's it about? You don't even get to know, by the way, necessarily what triumph will come out of it. You don't know when you'll triumph. All you know is, I don't want to avoid the pain. Just keep that in your mind. I'm going to walk through the fire. It's okay. I'll get stronger. So that's what I like to tell people. And I like to think of the pain as a treasure. If we find your pain, we're going to find your power. It's in there.
I love it. And this resonates with obviously us and people listening, because we just look at our lives, our stories, all of us, everybody. Life is painful. There's ups and downs, and what you've come through should hopefully make you stronger. Or at least, if not, it's taught you something that you can pick up and go from, in the next path of life. And so now I guess I've been doing a lot of programs and coaching, and I'm hearing a lot of stuff about the amygdala, though, and how we need to turn down, I guess, some of that pain and anxiety, and with neuroplasticity in the brain, like you can change your thinking. And so is that a different thing where that I'm hearing, don't go through the pain, maybe reduce your stress, try to rewire your thinking in your brain so that things can be easier, so you're not in that fight or flight mode all the time, because the fight and flight, that pain is not a good thing, because it's keeping you in a chronic state of stress and anxiety, and you can't move forward. So when do you know it's okay to go through the pain, and when do you need to rewire, calm the central nervous system, your cortisol, the amygdala, retrain your thoughts to just, that's the balance I'm struggling with. And I know lots of other people. It's like, well, just suffer it up through the pain and go through the fire, or try to control and retell myself new stories. What do I do?
Well, I think they're one and the same in a way. If you haven't, for anybody who hasn't looked squarely at the fire and walked through it, they will be anxious and depressed. It is in re-examining those things and really delving into them that you realize, I'm strong enough to do that. And then the anxiety and some of that depression can lift. Also, it is helpful cognitively to think to yourself, hey, metaphors are powerful. So when people are in a jam and they feel like they should flee, they're in a constant state of anxiety and they want to get out of the situation, I will often say to them, how many people do you see at a movie theater when the main character is in trouble, terrible trouble, throwing their popcorn away and leaving the theater? You must see that all the time, right? Tom Cruise is in a jam. Everyone's throwing let's get out of here. No, everyone has the same reaction. They say, I wonder what's going to happen. It's not easy to do that in your own life, but it is a way to calm the anxiety and say, look at your life a little bit askance and say, I wonder what's going to happen. It's okay to wonder. You don't have to have all the answers. When I was going through a lot of stress in my life, my son said, Dad, you don't seem that stressed out. And I said, I am. Actually, part of my job as your dad is I don't show it to you. I said, but I have another ace up my sleeve. I said, because I don't know what this is about or what good will come from it. And I may not be on the planet when the good comes from it. Because, for instance, let's say you have your back against the wall and some people think you're done in your future. And maybe I'm not even on the planet. And you look at them and you say, F you. I saw my dad go through things. You can go screw. It was worth it. 50 times. I'd go through this 50 times for that moment. And I may not know that's coming, but I have faith that this ain't for nothing.
I think it's so powerful that whether you're a Christian or have faith in any religion or not, that you can take that and use it to make
I'll give you another one.
Yeah.
Let me give you one that still gives me goose flesh. I evaluated, we are so powerful in each other's lives and we don't know what we're doing and how powerful we are. We don't know how it's going to manifest itself. I had a guy evaluated forensically who had almost killed a woman, came very, very, very close. And she had identified him. And he was arrested and he was going to go to jail for, 30, 40 years. And I interviewed him in jail. And I got his whole life story. And then as I was leaving the jail cell, I said, like Peter Falk in Columbo, I said, hey, one more stupid question. And he said, what? I said, you didn't kill her and she identified you. Why didn't you? He said, that is a stupid, it's irrelevant. I said, no, it's okay. Tell me the answer anyhow. He said, it's foolish. I said, and by the way, when someone tells you it's foolish when you're a shrink, it's really important.
Yeah.
This is like shrink 101.
Okay.
So I said, no, tell me. He said, well, it's weird. I had a third grade teacher. He said, I had terrible ADD. I was always running around the classroom. I couldn't read. I couldn't learn. And this one teacher said to me, I know what they're saying about you, but I think you're a good kid. And I heard that when I was going to kill her. What? You heard your third grade teacher say those words again when you were going to kill that woman when you're 30? Anybody who doesn't think that humans are inexplicably powerful in each other's lives, that's prima facie evidence that we are. And we may not know it, and that woman doesn't know it.
No, that third grade teacher who's probably
well,
deceased, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Like, wow.
But here's the part. This is what's just I'm kind of distilling some of this conversation, and it really blows my mind. Like when we talk about the avatar world and all of that, and then you think of what makes people feel alive, connected to God or the universe. It's faith, it's relationships, it's getting back into your body. It's all of these things that at the core, a lot of them is, it's faith, right?
Absolutely.
It's believing in something bigger than yourself and understanding that, God or the universe has your back. Well, you get mocked by the materialists. Oh, that's just nonsense. That's just silly. That's whatever. But look what the materialists have brought. Mm-hmm. They have brought us the fakest, least real world in imagining. Like I couldn't imagine this in 1975, that people would be living in the fakest of the worlds because they believed in the science and technology. So the most material thing that you can do makes your life the most hollow, the most empty, and the least real. Wow. Maybe Jesus was right, and the truth will set you free.
I think I wrote an article once that Jesus was the first psychiatrist. Absolutely the case, right? He's not blaming people for his suffering. He's actually reasserting his values at a moment when you would say, how is that possible? Right? No dodging of pain. No dodging of pain at all, right? And so that's the key. And the reason why communists hate religion is because it's very hard to control people and subjugate them if they feel like they're connected to a higher power, because that makes them very powerful themselves. Mm-hmm. You can't take a person's life entire if they feel connected to God, because when you're going to take their life, they say, really? What do you think you're doing? I'm showing bravery at the end. I win. Sorry.
Right.
Wow. We have so many other questions we'd love to ask you, but we're trying to be courteous for your time as well. And
no worries.
This is just, May and I are going to be debriefing after this.
Well, that's so kind of you. And you make it easy. Honestly, you really do. So thank you for the platform and the discussion. We should probably have people come. We'll treat them as a triumvirate.
Yes.
Yes.
That would be awesome.
That'd be more fun.
So 3 coaches are better than one.
Just to switch gears a little tiny bit, did the DEA, when they raided your office, ever tell you why?
Oh yeah.
No, the DEA, when they raided my office, never told me why. They also did not accept coffee, which I offered graciously, and they said that they could not accept that. No, there were some real interesting parts of the DEA's raid. It was sort of otherworldly because I had no idea what they were doing there. They had scheduled an appointment for a non-existent client and then appeared with armed folks in numbers. And, at moments like that, you can either, shudder and flee, or as I did, which is my usual way, I'm like, wow, this is really something. Do you guys want coffee? No. And so there was this moment. Oh, I think I mentioned this on Tucker's show, this moment where an overly zealous DEA agent took out of my desk, because they go in everything, sock drawers, desks, blue powder in a vial in my top desk drawer. And he held it up. He said, "Doc," I said, "it's a long story, actually." He said, "It always is." And And I said, you see that carved bear on my desk, the stone bear? He said, yeah. I said, well, that was a gift of a Native American that I worked with. He gave me that bear. And he said, if I feed it ground up turquoise stone, metaphorically speaking, but he brought the turquoise stone, I get courage if I feed the bear this turquoise stone. I said, which is what you have there in your hand. But you might want to take it and test it just to be sure. And he said, no, I don't think so. Even you couldn't make that up.
That's
Yeah.
that wow. That is amazing. So
I thought you were going to say that you turned the bear into like a fierce DEA eating like
Yeah, there you
animal who was going to come to life.
see, my personality would be to offer them coffee and go, and by just in case you're worried, there's no roofies in it.
go. And in case you're worried,
In case
right?
you're worried,
Exactly. In
it's
case
roofie.
you're worried, you're going to survive. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, you're gonna, you'll wake up and see Bill Cosby, but other than that, you'll be perfectly fine. So, how close to taking care of Hunter Biden was this raid? Do you think those were the approximate like cause, or?
Well, I mean, I don't interpret it. It's a fact that they took Hunter Biden's laptop from the office, and that I efforted making sure his attorney knew that through my attorney, because I don't divulge anything that a client might tell me ever. So if his property gets taken by a third party, I tell the client through his counsel in this case. So I don't know how to interpret their presence at all. I know that I must have led a pretty boring life because I wasn't arrested.
Well, that's because
There you
that's
go.
because you didn't write the wrong thing on your
So
check.
far.
Obvious.
So far. But I'll tell you this, they have come back. My attorney's going to hate this, by the way, because whenever I divulge anything, he hates it. They have come back and said, you didn't put addresses on a bunch of your prescriptions.
Good Lord.
And that adds up to millions of dollars in fines if we don't come to some sort of understanding. Now, by the way, I don't know if I ever got a prescription from a doctor that had my address on it.
Address?
But it turns out in federal matters, there's a fine associated with every prescription that you don't put a complete address for your patient. Who knew? But that's how the government can mess with you, because there are innumerable rules, regulations, and other things that nobody knows, and people have largely dispensed with because they're like, who cares? Like,
I'm like things they don't teach
I mean,
in med school. I mean, we
it's
never learned
it's
that.
Katrina Balzac, like in Swampscott, Mass. How many of them are there? And the wrong one's going to come with the prescription. Would she find it on the street? So anyhow, but this is if they can't find you to be a drug dealer, an assassin, a spy, then they have to find something.
Oh yeah.
Well, no, it's death by
course,
administrative
of course,
state.
of course.
It's what Beria said to Stalin: "Show me the man, and I'll show you the crime." We'll find something, and if we don't, it's like what Tucker says. Then they'll just put kiddie porn on your computer because they have control over that stuff too.
You know what? Thank God, right? Because you realize how vulnerable you are, and but then, as we've already said, sure, you're vulnerable. The state can torture you, but they can't take your soul unless you're willing to give it to them. It's the reason why in Sophie's Choice in the movie, and nobody wants to be in that position, so who knows what one would do, but she's asked by the German Gestapo guard, which one of your children do you want to save? Which one is going to the gas chambers? And she panics and, she does it. She wants to save one of her kids. The right answer is go F yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't play those games. Kill us all, you miserable, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I saw the Christ thing on the cross.
Yep.
Not available for your stupid games. You deal with your evil.
That's right.
That's wow. Talk about goosebumps. Yeah, this is just fantastic.
All right. Well, so
So
for those people other than us who don't know where to find you
yes.
and look you up, you want to just give a little plug for your website. What are you on
Sure.
socials and where to find all your stuff
Where they can find your avatar.
Yeah, but you can only find my avatar, actually. It's keithablow.com. So just go to keithablow.com. You can set up a meeting or whatever else, read some stuff, or you can go to pain2power.com. There's a lot of free stuff too. So, look at the videos. There are worksheets. None of it costs anything. So I hope people find it of some value.
They
Absolutely will.
If they don't, I don't know what they're doing. They're not looking. There you go. That's my answer.
That's really nice of you. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, your stuff is amazing. It slaps you in the face in a good way. And so
thanks.
So inspirational. So thanks again for being here. I know it took a little bit for us to finally get together. That's why
we'll do it again.
Do it in person.
Yeah. No, we would love to do it again because this has just been great. And
we know there's so many things we could talk about.
Right.
Anyway, thanks again, and we will be in touch.
You bet.
Thank you.
Hang out just for a sec when I hit pause.
You got it.